introduce themselves, starting with Witek.
Hi, I'm Witek Radomski. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Enjin, the author of the ERC 1155 token standard, and we've been building NFTs for the last 4 years.
Great, thanks. And Pandu?
Hi, my name is Pandu. I'm Decentricity on Twitter. I am the art curator of the Unique One Network. I'm also the CEO of the DeBio Network, and I'm really happy to be here with you guys.
Fantastic. Arif?
Hi, everyone. I'm Arif. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Alethea. What we're doing is we're pioneering a new standard for NFTs called the intelligent NFT. NFTs that can be interactive and intelligent and can communicate with you. I'm excited to be here with my fellow panelists.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining today, guys. To start off with, I know this is a panel about the future of NFTs, but I actually was curious to see if you expected the current NFT boom we've been experiencing for the last year. So Witek, starting with you, did you see it coming?
I think so. I mean, we've been trying to build this for gaming for the last 4 years. So we want NFTs to be, in real mainstream games, and we've known how giant the gaming space is. Our original social network grew to 20 million users and 250,000 gaming communities. So we knew that as soon as the user experience and technology got there, people are going to start coming on. I think we've only seen a fraction of a % of the stuff that's going to happen soon.
Definitely. Pandu, do you have anything to add on to that about your experience?
I didn't expect the extent of it to be quite so mainstream. We did do a lot of early NFT projects back in 2018 and 2019, and that was like things that are more utilitarian. Sort of like carbon credits tracking, and then like NFTs are used as the basically to lock in the documents. That was sort of the extent of my NFT experience, and we knew, like me and my team knew that it would be huge, but we didn't think it would garner such pop culture appeal, which is sort of something that surprised us all.
Arif, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was hard to predict something like this catching on so rapidly and mimetically. But I think the crypto space has been silently and quietly building bear market cycle after bear market cycle and building that infrastructure that sometimes is hidden, whether it's Witek's ERC 1155 standard. All of these things help move the space forward because they unlock innovations for permissionless creation. And we're seeing more and more developments that are maybe not as publicized, but I think the next NFT sort of tsunami that comes with this small wave that has been created in 2021, we're likely going to be seeing a lot more mass adoption because we're still so early with, I think, OpenSea having less than a million active wallets. We haven't really hit mainstream yet, but celebrity in crypto culture is certainly mixing well.
Sort of on that point about like the tsunami that we're expecting to come, often we talk about NFTs with regards to sort of the future, the metaverse, what we're gonna live like so far ahead. And I'm actually curious what you think is coming around the corner, like what's happening in the next maybe 2-3 years, and then we can discuss the far future. So maybe Arif, you could start on that one since you kind of mentioned it already.
Yeah, I think with Facebook's entry into the metaverse domain, the rebranding, the core focus on interactive digital experiences online, sometimes immersive gaming environments, all of these trends are coalescing in a way that people would not have foreseen, or maybe this convergence not as quickly as we thought possible. So there is a strong incentive and alignment from investors, but also from creators who need capital to bring their imaginations to life. So I think in the next 2 to 3 years, what we're likely going to see from our standpoint, at least from Alethea, what we're sensing and our understanding is consumers are going to demand more interactive, immersive experiences, whether it's in a gaming environment but they're also going to demand ownership of these assets so that they can have an interoperable environment where they can take one asset from one metaverse to another. And I think that's going to be really interesting to explore. And the dynamics there are going to be very novel, because the Web 2 walled gardens are not necessarily going to survive in a Web 3 world, right? But we may end up creating Web 3, we may end up creating similar dynamics that we had in Web 2 with Web 3 rails, right? So we might sleepwalk into certain dynamics that were unhealthy. And this is where protocol level innovation and permissionless innovation is going to play a really critical role.
Definitely. I actually want to come back to that point on, sleepwalking into our old issues. But on the point we're discussing, Pandu, what do you think is coming up just around that corner?
Sure. Before going to that, I just a bit of my background, sort of like personal background. I've been on the metaverse for 10 years. I was in Second Life very early. I owned land. I ran a museum. I had to leave Second Life because I actually forgot to pay the subscription fee. So all of the land that I owned got removed from me. It's no longer in my account. When I tried to sign up again and tried to claim my old account, Second Life refused to give me my land. Funny thing is, the museum, which is the Pico Vista Museum of Computing, it's Googleable. It's still there. It's still sort of one of the tourist destinations in Second Life. Is no longer owned by me. So that was what this feeds back into wanting to own things, right? Like when you are in a Web 2 walled garden or a Web 2 metaverse, those things are not owned by you. You are actually paying a subscription fee to have yourself be able to claim that you own these things, but they're not really. Once your subscriptions lapse, they are gone. So to the point of NFTs and metaverses, it fits really well. And this is something that at Unique One, we're also trying to develop. We are in collaboration with a company called Reality Chain. And Reality Chain is focused on creating basically cross-chain metaverses. So a metaverse that can, you log in with your MetaMask because your point of entry is MetaMask, for example. You own land in the MetaMask chain. But you walk over to another piece of land, which is actually a Polygon land. You need to reconnect and connect to Polygon, or Polkadot, connect to the Polkadot wallet. So it's sort of a multi-chain metaverse, and it's the same experience throughout, but multiple chains can basically join into it. They're currently doing sort of a more casual 2D metaverse instead of the 3D one. But they're developing the 3D metaverse as well. It's going to launch really soon. This is where Unique One is sort of investing in that project, and we really like it. We really like it because we are also a multi-chain NFT marketplace, as I mentioned. So I think the future will connecting back to that, making sure that we don't have Web3 walled gardens, is making sure that we have interoperability between these chains.
Awesome. I mean, it's so interesting, your background and personal experience with that. Witek, would you like to speak to your experience and what you see coming?
Yeah, I mean, Pandu, same thing. I mean, I grew up in this world and I spent most of my teenage years, I mean, thousands and thousands of hours, sometimes doing all-nighters in MMO universes, in these virtual worlds like Second Life and others. And, a lot of that history has been lost. A lot of my identity has been lost. So I think that we're going to see people start to demand and want to have this identity. They're going to have this concept that I have a digital persona and identity. And a lot of the people today are already having this. I mean, 50% of kids are playing either Roblox or Minecraft. They're completely steeped in this sort of philosophy. I think what is coming in the NFT space, people are not going to think of it as blockchain. They're going to interact with these worlds, and there's going to be a whole metaverse that's part decentralized metaverse, part crypto metaverse, and then part established players, the Microsofts, the Epic Games, the Meta, Facebook guys, all these different metaverses, and they're all going to connect together in different ways. And you're going to know, how you can actually easily move between these different worlds. I think the UX is going to be radically improved now that, the world's eyes are on this. So people will, I think in a few years' time, be able to natively, naturally interact, whether it's in a gaming context, in the physical world, in the sports world, in so many different ways. You'll go shopping and you'll get an NFT with items, and they'll just feel natural. So it's gonna be really interesting.
Great.
Definitely. Looking forward to seeing how that all plays out. It has been mentioned just in this last discussion, but we often talk about the future, and it's always positive and opportunities. But I'm curious if you see any possible threats, sort of this NFT metaverse world we're moving towards could pose to maybe the individual or communities. Maybe Arif, starting with you.
Yeah, I think one thing that blockchain-based ownership does, it provides a lot of sovereignty and agency to the individual, right? And with that, it also aggregates a lot of risk back to the individual. So if you get hacked, if you get your keys stolen, all of these things that we normally today at least outsource to banks, whether it is doing you have to have a bank account, let's say if you're in Singapore, or in America, you have to have certain aspects of our life that have been hard-coded and hardwired in our minds. And now we are getting used to the idea that we are self-custodying a lot of these assets. I think that is possible, that will possibly create a lot of risks at the user level. And if you just look analogously at like the amount of spam or phishing email that goes out and how people get tricked, like imagine a world where we're all living in, where we are all having custody of our assets. The amount of education a user will need as they go through this journey about how important ownership is going to be central, right? And I think that's something that, if not taken care of well, it will lead to systemic risk in the longer run. So that's also something that needs to be thought through really well as we onboard people to Web3.
Pandu, your thoughts? Sorry.
I think one of the major things, and this relates to everything, is the problem of user awareness of owning things. I mean, this is more towards and this is your job, Layla, because you're actually reporting on this. But the ideas behind ownership and responsibility of ownership and having control of your private keys. And that is, I don't know if you guys are on crypto Twitter, and a few weeks ago, there was like a ton of pushback towards NFTs from the furry community. And which is ironic because the furry community has cartoon profile photos as well, but they're pushing back against NFTs, saying that it's not environmentally sound. And there's a lot of things that they mentioned, and it's not, that's sort of the thing that is the roadblock, is a cultural roadblock, and we need to think, and not to go Joe Rogan on you guys, but like a lot of the mainstream media are centralized, so they do have sort of an incentive to keep that centralization, and this type of centralization does not lend itself extremely well to the decentralization of the NFT metaverse. I think that's the first roadblock, is the awareness of users, and the awareness of the users are actually based on the public knowledge, and public knowledge is brought about by mass media as well. So that is a danger. And the second danger is decentralization and name only. And I'm going full degen on this, but a lot of DAOs, so-called decentralized autonomous organizations, are not really decentralized because of the actors in it. Which is fine at first, because decentralization is always a journey, but the journey needs to end in decentralization, not stop decentralization. So I think those are the two roadblocks that we've actively fighting against.
Interesting. Witek, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with both of your points. I also wanted to point out something. What we're trying to do in our organization, we're building a blockchain called Efinity. One of the core driving forces behind that is that we want everyone in the world to be able to feel like they can be a part of this NFT universe and this NFT economy. A lot of the crypto space has always been, you get in early, you get in an ICO, or you're one of the early guys who knew about this special coin or this drop or whatever, and then you're hoarding all this power and this wealth and this kind of stuff, right? We're living in a world of creators. We're all creators now. Everybody's pushing out content. This is completely different to the world that I grew up in, even 10, 15 years ago was completely different. Everyone is pushing out content now. So we want everyone to have an equal right to have their identity represented, their assets represented, and to make an impact in the digital universe, not just the early guys. So I think that is going to be a challenge that people have to, work on. And also just in general, the general public still sees crypto and NFTs as this sort of, casino trading, degen thing, right? We want to start highlighting the new capabilities of this technology, the social capabilities, the free market, the contract as code, the history and openness that you can tap into from everywhere, from the web, from different games, from the metaverse. So those are going to be key to make this succeed and to make it fair for everyone in the world.
Definitely. I mean, you discussed roadblocks there, and that was going to be my next question specifically, but I actually want to ask Arif what roadblocks he sees, because he didn't particularly mention that in the previous question.
Yeah, I think from an educational standpoint, whether it is decentralization theater, like Pandu said, or how Witek framed his challenges in the way that the blockchain the revolution sometimes looks very insular, so outsiders feel lost and disconnected because they were not early to something. I think similar to the challenges that crypto will provide, some roadblocks will occur regulatory, because it's such a new technology that a lot of regulators have not yet fully grasped the impact of what it means to own an NFT asset, what it means for a person's tax, what it means for a game economy's taxation, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of education here for the market that needs to be done. And some of the leading projects like Enjin, like a.k.a, a number of them are actually taking a leadership position and educating regulators on it regularly, right? And that's a painful task, and we are grateful to them for shouldering that burden. But at the same time, it points to the challenge when you have a disruptive technology like this, and it's about to attain mass awareness, and it's going to be in many people's hands. There are going to be implications when your next door neighbor starts to trade NFTs, and suddenly they've launched a collection that is doing $100,000 in volume per week, right? So what does that mean for them, for their income, for their lifestyle? That's something that we all have to grapple with.
Definitely. On that, speaking of neighbors starting collections, there's so many areas where NFTs touch. So when you say what's the future of NFTs, what's next for NFTs, there's which section, where are you talking about? So I was wondering if there's an area that maybe is under discussed at the moment. Gaming, art, music all have really big draw and attention, but I was wondering if there's something that you think maybe people are not paying attention to that will be coming up and we will want to know about. Witek, or do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, I can just mention two things. Firstly, I think personalized NFTs and people just being able to create them with a voice command or telling Siri or hitting a button on your phone and taking a picture and just having that tap into the whole marketplace. I think that's not been explored as much as it could be. And secondly, I'm really excited to see this technology extend to underdeveloped countries, countries that have been hit really hard by the COVID pandemic, and help elevate those economies, help elevate the young people to create businesses, and basically help the world in a good way. So I think there's a lot of potential in that space.
And your thoughts on what we're maybe not talking about with NFTs?
Yeah, so I run the decentralized bio network, and that's one of the things that we're also researching is so just to take a broader view, not just related to biology, but like any kind of personal data that can be monetized currently is monetizable, but not by you. So I'm not going to mention names, but personal genetic testing companies are getting a lot of money from your data because computer-aided drug design are actually using that set of data without probably with your consent, but you don't realize when you read the terms and conditions and you just press OK. Personal genetic testing companies test your genes, get your genes, put them in a block of other genes, and then sell them. That's still, I mean, that's legal. But in terms of ethicalities and flowing back the value to the users that generated these personal sets of data, and again, I'm talking generically, I think NFTs can really help. That's sort of the thing that we did in 2018 with the carbon credits trading documents, because when you claim carbon credits, you need to provide documents. The documents need to be signed off on, and that document needs to be an NFT, basically, because we need to make sure that everyone who is in the document chain is seen, and who owns the document, and that document actually gives them carbon credits. So we did this study a couple of 2018 was, wow, that's 4 years ago. All right, okay. Anyway, so I'm thinking like the more serious applications of NFTs, as in like the more enterprise applications of NFTs need to be discussed more, because this is no longer talking about enterprise implementation, but actually talking about how it relates to you and your personal data. And I think that is very important.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, frustratingly, it doesn't grab headlines, but it definitely is super important. Arif, your comments on this topic.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be a bit biased and say, given our interests in combining two exponential technologies like artificial intelligence and NFTs, I think there's a lot of there is a machine learning revolution happening tangentially to the blockchain revolution, right? And it's happening at such intensity and speed that the crypto community may not be seeing it because it's happening so rapidly. And this is where it starts to get interesting, because when you start looking at a metaverse like Facebook, and if you think a little bit about how we have, started to think about open and closed metaverses, right? Closed wall garden approaches like Facebook versus, let's say, open experiences like a.k.a. or Sandbox. All of these are going to play a very important role along that spectrum. But if you start thinking about the core competitive advantage that Facebook or some of these larger companies have, they have hired some of the most sophisticated machine learning engineers, some of the most thoughtful leaders who have written in the AI space, right? And they have sort of optimized, let's say, your news feed so that it can deliver the specific news to you as you browse that experience, create hooks for you so that you never leave your TikTok feed, right? So they understand consumer engagement at a level that is deeply intrinsic, and so do the algorithms that they've created, right? So all of this is happening on the side. On crypto, we're really focused on ownership and aspects of ensuring that that we can bring creators this opportunity and tool. But once we start looking at the AI revolution seriously that's happening, and we start thinking about how these two might combine, whether it's in generative art or whether it is, in our case, integrating AI personalities into NFTs, that's when I think things start to get really interesting. And I think that's sort of the evolution of not just an open metaverse, but an open and intelligent metaverse.
Definitely. That point you brought up is actually really interesting, and I was wanting to maybe get the panel's thoughts on this. Obviously, the introduction of Meta by Facebook is sort of shaken up the NFT and crypto community a bit, because it's sort of goes against what many of us believe is the core principles of decentralization for the metaverse and Web3. I was wondering if Arif mentioned already the fact that people will need to be able to accept sovereignty. Do you think that something like Meta is a considerable threat to what the space is trying to build? Maybe Witek, I could start with you.
I actually think that Facebook and Meta is going to do the right thing. They're going to build this in an open fashion. They've already delivered a lot of fascinating, amazing technologies like GraphQL and React that were fully open source and have helped tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of businesses in the world. So they want to integrate with the metaverse, and they will be that they'll be part of that centralized component, but fully tie into the decentralized world. I do see another threat though. They don't really have a good way to protect against Sybil attacks. That's basically, I think that the next wave is going to be basically bots, really smart bots pretending to be humans. And so with blockchain, you have the solution. You can actually have a digital identity that's been proven. You can sign things. And so, yeah, the decentralized component is going to be very important.
Pandu, your thoughts on the threats that maybe this sort of new navigation is dealing with?
I'm ambivalent, as in I'm pretty sure that this actually brought a lot of attention to this space. I don't know, my favorite metaverse currently, like my metaverse of choice currently is CryptoVoxels, and CryptoVoxels I think gained 10,000 followers and like the week after Mark Zuckerberg made that announcement video. So it's a rising tide raises all boats. That's gonna happen. It is good for the space. Everyone is going to actually go into this space just wondering what's going on. And as Witek said, Facebook has contributed a lot of technology that is actually being used by the community. I do have some concerns about their basically the business model that they are currently having with Facebook, which is basically data monetization, personal data monetization. And again, this is sort of a bugbear with me, if you haven't noticed yet. So I'm keen on looking at what they can do with the metaverse, but I'm not keen in terms of them utilizing their current business models to actually achieve that metaverse. I am quite keen on, like, one of the interviews that I think Gary Vee did with Mark Zuckerberg. Mark said something about interoperability with other metaverses, and there is hope in that. I think that would be cool. That would be awesome. But again, I'm ambivalent in terms of, like, it might be good, might be bad. But it is currently actually pretty good for the ecosystem because everyone's talking about it. We are not just weird people playing with Second Life anymore or CryptoVoxels. It's gained international recognition when people know about it. Yeah.
Arif, you did obviously talk about this already in your other answer, but I was wondering if you had any other points to add to what you'd already said.
Yeah, I think past behavior is sometimes a good indication of future behavior, right? And like, do we really want to trust a company that messed up our news feed and the problems that occurred with elections to get the metaverse right? And I think this is where it starts to get interesting, because the open source movement, if you start thinking a little bit about what would happen with, let's say, Red Hat and Linux, or the way Microsoft purchased GitHub. There's a lot of, there is definitely a business case to be made where you integrate open source technologies to drive more competitive acquisition of user behavior, of consumers, so that you drive shareholder value, right? So if the end result is shareholder value, that's very, very different from, let's say, user or community owned value, right? And so user or community owned values have a different DAO-centric business model, or different elements that foundationally creates a different DNA in the way that the community is shaped, the way governance is put forward. So these things, I would find it extremely difficult, exceptionally difficult to believe that we can have some sort of hybrid metaverse which is open and interoperable, that is run by a large technology company that has a strong incentive to maximize shareholder value, right? Unless that core foundational structure is shifted or changed, then it may be different, right? So that's essentially the tension they have to navigate. It provides a tremendous opportunity to Web3 companies to actually take that ownership space forward and drive awareness. It's just technically, sometimes we don't have as much punching power as the larger tech companies have. So this is where the creativity and ingenuity and the creation of new permissionless standards is going to be foundational.
Definitely, that's really a good point. I was curious, Pandu, you mentioned it earlier, that there was like discussions about environmental impact come up a lot when we discuss NFTs. And if we're talking about Web3 companies building this, metaverse future, do you think that we're putting in the effort to make sure that we build a future that is more sustainable, better, can last longer than what we've already created now in our like Web2 physical world? Pandu, I'll start with you.
So when you talk to Bitcoin maxis, they would say that, you know what, that's actually the transformation of fossil energy to digital energy. And Bitcoin is digital energy. So Bitcoin maxis would say that. Okay, I'm not a Bitcoin maxi, but like it's a fair point, because we are transforming something to the digital world. We're burning fossil fuels. Basically, we're burning and minting. That's true in some cases, but as we know, we live in a multi-chain world right now. Like Ethereum is not the only game in town. There's and Ethereum 2.0 is coming. The Near protocol actually has something called the Open Forest protocol, which is God, I don't know the exact detail of what they do, but they involve carbon credits. And Near itself is a carbon neutral blockchain. There's other blockchains as well that are more optimized to their use cases. So like, the heterogeneous multi-chain blockchains like Polkadot, Kusama, and the Octopus network as well are multi-chain. And these are all being built in a way that is more sort of sustainable. I have a secret that I'm going to reveal to everyone. I'm an environmental engineer. I went to college for it. So I was talking about carbon credits, talking about like that's sort of something I did for 4 or 5 years back in college. So the thing about the blockchain is you can look at it like proof of work, right? Proof of work is the transformation of like, as the Bitcoin maxis say, transformation of energy to digital energy. And proof of stake is a bit less decentralized in a way, because it becomes like those who have the tokens have power. That's sort of the rejection from the Bitcoin maxis towards the proof of stake, but it is also more carbon neutral. And I think there's a balance, and I think the future will still be multi-chain. I think the future will still be like dominated by not just one blockchain, but multiple types of consensus models and multiple types of chains. And as such, that question that you asked, are we doing the right thing? I think we are, but it depends on which right thing that you're defining it to be. And I think if you're very environmentally focused, then use the carbon neutral blockchain. It already exists. That is also why interoperability becomes very important, because there needs to be a way to interop between that carbon neutral blockchain to a more lossy blockchain, but one that brings value. Yeah.
Witek, I was wondering what you thought on this subject.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's always going to be probably a proof of work chain like Bitcoin, but with what people want to do with blockchain, I think it's going to be orders of magnitude larger than even what's happening today. And all the computers in the world are, we can't have the whole world just running blockchains, proof of work, and just destroy the planet. I mean, as I've seen in my city, Vancouver here, we're having these massive climate disasters, and it's pretty scary. So yeah, that's Enjin. We've talked to the United Nations. We're on board with their sustainability goals, and so we want to be part of this. So I think again, as the use cases will develop, people will move to proof of stake, nominated proof of stake, like Polkadot, and state channels and all these things. I think the last 3 or 4 years have been sort of experimentation and how to scale properly and how to make this sustainable. Now we kind of know what solutions there are, and we can utilize them.
Arif?
Yeah, I think just agreeing with both of them on the importance of the industry tackling some of these more vexing problems and challenges, because there is some legitimate criticism about energy consumption in crypto, which is fine, and there are some ways of solving these challenges. One of the interesting developments, I think, is going to be the rise of edge computing, where we will be able to do high-level compute on mobile devices. And I think the ability and opportunity for people to be able to run nodes on their phones, or provide opportunities like this on, I think, more complex Raspberry Pis, that's going to change the game for people who want to participate in these networks, but also provide a little bit more energy efficient environmental solutions.
Definitely, that will also be a huge game changer for what Witek spoke about earlier in terms of reaching communities who maybe don't have the access that all of us do, and that'll be incredible. So I was wondering, I mean, we're always saying that we're early, but I feel like if you're someone outside of the space and you've been watching it, you with every new sale or every new sort of NFT trend, you're like, I'm falling further and further behind. I'm never going to make it into the space. So I was wondering what you would say to those who maybe feel like they missed it, even though we know that they haven't. So Arif, would you like to start?
Yeah, no, it's always important to make people who are on the outskirts feel even more FOMO, right? So like that's a central principle in crypto. But I think generally the as I shared earlier, I mean, if you look at the number of active wallets on OpenSea, if you look at, there's a really good graphic that I saw recently floating on Twitter, which shows just the number of wallets, the number of total users, and like the number of people in the gaming ecosystem, right? Like it's just a tiny fraction of what the market opportunity is, but also the opportunity to educate people on ownership, and that they can evolve and move the direction of the metaverse towards self-sovereignty. I think that's something that is occurring right now in these dialogues and conversations. And I think because we are so early, there is a bit more alpha, but there's also a lot more responsibility to try and communicate some of this messaging out in a way that is sustainable. Because the earlier you are, the higher the risks are that we take. And I think having been through like a number of bear market cycles, if you have that staying power to continue building, that's something that communities later will definitely treasure.
Definitely. Witek, could you maybe give us a short answer, because we're definitely running out of time?
If you look at a chart of Bitcoin, it's not one wave, it's wave after wave after wave. I think we're at like 1% of the potential of this. The world has just started realizing the potential of NFTs. So it's going to be a long journey, and it's going to be lots of chances to get in, grab your surfboard and ride it.
You've got maybe 20 seconds.
I think that humans and communities and decentralized communities in general always innovate, and you can enter the innovation wave or the next one now.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining, guys. That's the end of our session. It was a great chat, and I hope you have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.